All right, you dropped out of high school.
Yeah, not the smartest move.
Okay. But you ended up going back to school and being very successful at school and just in general, successful as a programmer, as a developer, as a creator of software. How were you able to find your way? Can you tell that journey of dropping out and then finding your way back?
There's no moment when I dropped out. You just go less and less and less until you realize it's going to be embarrassing if I show up because I haven't been there in a long time. And then pretty soon you're just not going. And that's how you drop out of high school. So if you find yourself on that path, stop doing that. But that's precisely what I did. And so now I'm not at school and I have to get a job. So I'm working at 7-Eleven and a paint warehouse and stuff like that. And 7-Eleven is actually kind of an interesting job because it's a job I think they keep rotating for people that are smart enough to do the night shift with all the accounting and the administration and stuff they make the night shift do, but that have reasons personally that they need to work at 7-Eleven. And I was one of those people because I had no high school diploma.
What are some memorable moments from that time at 7-Eleven? Maybe what do you appreciate about the difficulty of that job?
Probably the worst moment for me. I mean, I got held up at knife point and stuff, and that's all entertaining. But the worst, the suckiest part for me was doing the gas dips. You've got it's like a 15 or 20 foot wooden stick, and it's measured in gradients of inches and feet. And you drop it into the gasoline tanks, and then you bring it up and you measure where the gasoline sits because there's no electronic sensor. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing that, and the first time I do it, I drop the pole and I re-grab it. Well, that's about 1,000 splinters of wood into your hands, and it's 40 below out, and that really sucked.
Oh, wow.
And I realized I don't want to do this for my whole life. I knew that, so.
Okay, so you stand there frozen with splinters in your hand.
And at some point, I have a revelation about my life that next time I'm going to do it differently. And then how ludicrous that is hits me about 3 seconds later, right? And I think that was really the moment for me where I realized that I've got to do something different. And so even though I was 21, I went and I talked to the principal of my local high school, and I was like, can you let me back in? And he's, no, you're too old. And we don't have room. It was his main reason. And I said, well, between now and then, somebody's going to drop out. So you'll have room. So let's assume you have room. Can I come back? And he was gracious and let me come back. And so I did the 3 or 4 classes that I needed.
Yeah, just if you can linger on that, the slow dropping out. That's a weird thing that you can do with your brain. You realize to yourself that you don't have to do the thing that everybody else is doing. And that's a dangerous realization because, you kind of have to be part of society to do certain things.
Right.
And if you realize, you don't have to do what everybody else is doing, you can either have an incredible life or a really difficult life.
Well, the problem with that process is you're making a much smaller decision. I'm just not going to go to class today.
Yeah.
And that's all you're deciding. But you do that enough times, you're making a much bigger decision. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem.
So it's better to make, if you want to live life in a non-standard way, it's better to make the big decision explicitly. And then you can stop going.
Yeah.
Don't allow yourself to make the
It'll be made for you eventually.
Okay. Well, you got back and you eventually went to college and were very successful as a student. And you weren't that good of a student before.
No, I was a terrible student in high school. And even my first semester of college, I still wasn't taking it quite serious because I got mercy passed in Geometry 90, which is like the makeup class for the geometry 12th grade class that I didn't have. And that scared me because I realized by 1% or the grace of the professor that let me through, I just about ended my entire university career here. So fortunately, those marks don't count on your transcript because they're remedial classes. And so I got kind of a fresh start the next semester and did it for real. And I did it for me. And that made all the difference.
What can you speak to, maybe by way of advice, on how to be successful as a student?
Well, ideally, there's some aspect of school that you do enjoy, whether it's art, whether it's computer science, whether it's shop class, whatever. So go for those classes and just put up with and do the hard stuff because it's way easier than having to do it later. And that's easy to say when you're 50-something. It's harder to say when you're 15-something. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
All right. What's the story of you joining Microsoft? How do we get to there from 7-Eleven to Microsoft?
Yeah, it's a big jump. So I had gone back to school, and I think it was my 3rd year of university. I was working for the phone company for the summer as a summer job, and I'm doing conversions of their UBNet to TCP/IP and modern networking, which really amounts to swapping cards, but then figuring out why their config.sys doesn't allow Lotus to run anymore because it's got 10K less than it used to. And it's just a horrible time to be working in computers, but I was doing it. And at lunch, I'm sitting in the food court with the old and the board, and I'm reading a book that I had bought called Microsoft, or Bill Gates and the Making of Microsoft. Hard Drive, I think is his title. And it's a great book. It's just sort of a matter-of-fact history of how Microsoft came to be, what it's like, how it operates, what the people are like there. And I'm reading this book, and I become really entranced by it and fascinated because it sounds like exactly the place that I want to be, but I'm in Saskatchewan, so what am I going to do about it? And what I wound up doing was I had put myself through school with a program called Hypercache, which is a file system cache for the Amiga, because the Amiga didn't have any out of the box. And it had done reasonably well. And so I went through my registration cards, because in those days you had a 4x6 card that people had to fill out with their name and their address, and if they had an email, their email, and they send it in, they get notifications of updates and so on when it's shareware. And I went through the whole stack looking for anybody with a Microsoft email address. And I found maybe 3 or 4 people, and I just cold emailed them and said, hey, I'm a operating system student in Saskatchewan looking for an opportunity. I don't remember exactly what I said. But one guy, Alistair Banks, he wrote back and he said, I know somebody that I can put you in contact with. And he put me in contact, I think, with a guy named Ben Slivka, who did a phone interview, who eventually wanted to hire me to work in MS-DOS for the summer. So that's how I got there.
You put yourself to school by, tell me about Hypercache. You build a piece of software.
It's the weight loss program for hard drives.
That was sufficiently useful to a large number of people that would somehow give you money.
Yeah, it made decent money. I mean, I sold a couple thousand copies at $20 a copy or $40 a copy.
What program, what language was it written in?
C.
C.
So there was some assemblers. The actual really tight code to do the real work of transferring data to and from the cache was 68,000 assembly. Everything else was C.
Okay, this is like file system I/O?
Device block I/O. So any block that gets service from the drive would go through my cache first, and it was an n-way associative cache. And so it would try to match the geometry of the drive and do prefetch based on you trying to read a whole track at one time, that kind of thing.
What was it like trying to get your software out there at that time? Like how were you able to find customers?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I started on Usenet, and some of the Amiga forums posted, here's my trial version, try it out for 30 days, see what you like. Okay. And eventually got picked up by a few retailers. And I remember I was with my now wife in her car, and she had a cell phone because her dad was very concerned about her safety. And so this is late 80s, and she's got, the antenna on the roof and the big box in the trunk, the whole deal. But we got a call from one of the software retailers that wanted to buy 50 copies at $20, which to me is $1,000, which in 1989 or whatever year it is, was a big deal. And so eventually a number of companies just bought inventory.